All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Omar Pinto Coaching Podcast. Today, we have Benita Wolfe joining us on the show. Can I pronounce it like that, Benita?
Yes, you can.
Okay,
That's how I
because
pronounce it.
see,
Benita.
most of you, because I'm from California, would not even suspect that I'm Latino. So occasionally, I will just allow myself to be Latin. So, Benita, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, Latino.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, a little background here. Benita and I met. Looks like when we were talking before the episode started recording, back in 2016.
Mhm.
You were uh, you were here in Costa Rica. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing here at the time.
I was teaching at Envision Fest,
Mm-hmm.
the yoga music festival that is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there teaching yoga, and I had been to Costa Rica a few times before teaching retreats and other invitational things. So that's why I was there.
And how long have you been teaching yoga?
Oh, wow. What year are we? 20. Oh, 20 years. 20. I taught my first yoga class January of 2002.
That
Oh,
is,
just about 20 years.
yeah, incredible. It's funny how time flies.
Hmm.
It does. So,
Crazy.
um, and we haven't. Okay, so that was 2016, and we're in 2021. So we're talking 5 years since we
Wow.
saw each
Yeah.
other. Okay,
Mhm.
and the funny thing is that when we were introduced by my wife. So Benita knows my wife Marcela,
Uh-huh.
and she says, "Hey, let's go out to dinner. I want you to meet my friend." And I said, "Yeah, of course. Let's go out to eat." Right. And we literally haven't seen each other, or, talked to each other in 5 years. But I recently started following her on Instagram. Right. We started following each other, and it's interesting how the energy just immediately just kind of just yeah, it just kind of sucks you back in, right, in the most beautiful and loving ways.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm like, oh, and I remember back then she would go by BJ, right? And so I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, look, it's BJ. Sweet. And then my wife was telling me, yeah, I'm gonna be doing an immersion, a total immersion workshop with her. That's for for a year, right? And we're gonna talk about that in a little bit. But I said, hey, you know what? Can I reach out to her? I'd love to see if she'd be interested in being on the podcast, right? Because one of the things I want to do is just kind of rekindle that conversation we started 5 years ago. So we were out to dinner, and I think I've been a coach my whole life. I mean, I just think that it's one of my gifts, right? And even back then, I wasn't officially coaching
Hmm.
back then. Okay. It was just, I had my podcast. It was a year into my podcast. So I was just used to, you know, interviewing people. Right. And somehow we got on the topic of her relationship. Right. And I don't even remember exactly. I was just trying, I was like, Benita, do you remember what we talked about? You're like, I can't remember exactly what it was. Right. But, what did you say?
I said, I don't know, but I'm here. It worked and I loved it.
Yeah. Right. Like you remember it was.
I remember it was like, wow, powerful, and to take it in and integrate it. And I wish I could remember the details, but I am here with him,
Yes.
and
And
I wasn't then.
right. And so at the time you weren't in a relationship with Jack, or were you?
We were kind of at that beginning stage where, like still kind of seeing other people. I had a pretty uh, global career at the time, and he was doing his thing. And so, like to have that kind of come together into something actually tangible and was a process.
So I'm curious. So there was a lot of traveling. Were you both traveling?
I was for sure regular. Yeah. And so was he, not as
Mhm.
much, but yeah, he did.
So what was it? What was it that moment for you where, and for Jack, right? Was there a moment where you guys were like, we're either going to do this or we're not? Or did you guys kind
Uh,
of just seamlessly move into it?
it just kind of naturally evolved into it. Yeah, like
Snuck
the
up on
one
you?
thing, yeah, yeah, and the one thing that they say never do is mix business. Like that's how we actually met.
Mm-hmm.
So had been peers for first and friends, and then it just slowly evolved, and then it was like, you know, as
This is working.
friends, yeah, and so.
And so now, 5 years later, you guys are together. And what kind of effect did the coronavirus have on your relationship?
Ooh, it was interesting because as the coronavirus, we were like we actually worked together
Mm-hmm.
in a school teaching teacher trainings, and so all of those got canceled, obviously, in person stuff. And then, so that was big. And just at the beginning, like the first month of the lockdown, like the first 2 weeks after that, it was like, you're kind of on top of each other. And so we kind of processed through that and then found a rhythm. And we were really lucky, had amazing weather. And so gardening outside, did all kinds of walking and being on the land. We're out here in Ireland and it's wild and beautiful. And so that's pretty much what we did. It worked out.
So would you say it brought you two closer together?
Oh, definitely.
What I've
Yeah. I mean, there
noticed.
are definitely moments I was like, I want to run away. But that in itself, that I was like stuck or not stuck, but yeah, stuck or whatever, actually made me sit with my sit in the dark, in those things where my habitual thing would be, I'm out of here. I had to
Absolutely.
be with the uncomfort.
It's really, Corona has invited all of us to sit in the discomfort.
And we've all faced all
Hmm.
of our stuff. I would say the entire planet.
And that's the curious thing, because what I find is that for many of us, like yourself, like me, like Marcella, like Jack, right? We kind of, even when we don't know what to do, we'll quickly recognize that we don't know what to do, and we go back to finding our center. Okay, since I don't know what to do, I need to go within. I need to
Mhm.
slow things down, and I need to allow, and I need to receive. Okay, and I need to connect. I think we take that for granted, Benita,
Mhm.
because as far as me being a coach, there's a lot of people that resist. Okay, the whole idea is, hey, listen, you're getting an opportunity to work on yourself. Now would be a good time
Definitely.
to do that, but I don't want to. I want to go. When is it going to go back to normal? And I'm like,
There is
what part of normal do you want to go back to?
no.
And does it even seem feasible, right?
Mhm.
So ultimately, that's kind of where we're at now. But I'm curious, 20 years of yoga, and so where did it all begin? When did you decide that you were going to move in that direction? Were you always interested in yoga? Were you always interested in, you know, holistic work? Can I say that? Can I call that? Can I
Mm,
call it holistic work?
you
How would
can
you call it?
say I was always interested in mystical, the
Mystical.
unknown, and
Okay. I love it.
knowing, like, why are we on the planet. Even when
Hmm.
I was a little girl, I had like what I would consider mystical experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really always that was always my thing, you know. And I
So
never, I'm sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
Yeah. And so, and then, life goes on. I was very young when I had children. If I go back, I can say all these little gateways of uh, connecting with the mystery to create the world that I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, um, includes having children very young. That's all I wanted. And anyway, and so then, and I also taught aerobics. I was physical. If I'm a physical person. I like to do sports and all those things. And so I was an aerobics teacher. And then at one point, I was working, just teaching aerobics. And one of the ladies said, you should try yoga. And I was like, forget it. The other yoga teacher that was at the place that I was teaching aerobics, she was all kind of dragging blocks around, and she wasn't even very, um, she never seemed like friendly, if that makes any sense. And so
Mm-hmm.
wasn't interested. Few years later, a guy that I knew from our little local coffee shop in Arizona, we had fun. He owned the coffee shop, and he's like, I really think you would like it. Um, and so I finally kind of acquiesced and, okay, I'll go try the yoga, because I had always had the thing, oh, it's like people sitting around oming, or whatever. And the Hare Krishnas in the airports back in whatever, the 70s and stuff. Anyway, I went to a couple classes at my gym before his, and I was just like, oh, this is boring. It didn't inspire me. And then he's like, you got to try this teacher. He is the best teacher in Phoenix, and you'll love it. And I'm like, okay. So I got up really early one morning and went. And it was actually in a property that I was a partner in and had just finished building a commercial property, which was, it's all part of those synchronistic connections that you can't figure out until you look behind. You could never plan them. And so I was like, wow, he was challenging and I loved it. And I was just about to turn 40. I was like 39. And I just was like, I loved it. This is what I'm doing. And I like literally quit teaching aerobics after 15 years of teaching aerobics, and started yoga like 5 days a week, and that was the beginning. So
So that fifth,
and so I feel like, back to your original question, sorry to circle back, I feel like yoga kind of found me. Like literally the third teacher I tried, I was like, oh, okay, this is good. I had the reflection outside from other people telling me, oh, you would love yoga. You're athletic and you're spiritual, and I don't really like that word spiritual, because there's a lot of baggage with that, like we need to be embodying our light, not being transcending and, la-di-da. So
that's, I don't want to even gloss over that, because I consider myself spiritual. Okay.
yeah,
And in the sense of spirituality, because I spent so much time rejecting religion. And
yeah.
so I spent a lot of time battling within my own relationship with God, the universe, a higher power, right? The truth,
Hmm.
and
The mystery,
the
with a capital
mystery.
M.
Okay, the
It
mystery.
is a mystery.
Yeah, of course. And so for me, there was certainly, I was being called back to it, even though I'd rejected it. I rejected spirituality and God because of religion.
Hmm.
And so at the time, the only way that I could kind of wrap my head with it was just that a spiritual practice,
Hmm.
you know, is personal in nature. So you can create an individualized spiritual practice. Would you agree?
Right. I would definitely agree.
So I'm curious what your baggage is on the spirituality.
Well, the baggage with spirituality from the yoga perspective,
Mm.
I mean, if you look at any of those kind of organized ways of transmission of wisdom and spiritual teachings,
Mm-hmm.
in the yoga traditions, they were, and pretty much still are, in a hierarchical thing, just like in a religion.
Okay.
So, and then, you've heard of all the different, maybe you have or haven't, scandals in all the
Mm.
different hatha yoga systems, all the different systems. There have been scandals, including the yoga school or tradition that I was, learning in and going and teaching through for the last, well, till 2012. Then that was when the scandal was, and then it recreated it, and it's more kind of like just an online school with certifications and all that stuff. It's not so hierarchical. It's
I
doesn't have
remember.
a guru.
Well, yeah, okay.
The hierarchical, like, it's not a,
Yeah.
and in general, like, they can be women too, but it doesn't have that hierarchy that religions and yoga traditions have.
So there is that introduction to a dogmatic belief
Yeah,
system. Okay.
this is the way you do it.
This is the
And
way.
we have our different things. So that would be the spiritual baggage I carry with the yoga,
Okay. Okay. This is
and then
so
there's,
good. This is a
yeah,
great
the whole
conversation.
thing about spiritual bypassing too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all good. So,
No, no, it's none of it's good when it stops being pure. So we have the purity, and that's what I would consider when I think about spirituality. I think about essence and purity, removing, because when I think about spirituality, I think of individuals. I don't think about a practice, because there's a yoga practice, there is a recovery practice, there's a religious practice, there's all these different
right.
practices attached to a dogmatic, hierarchic, I don't even know how
Hmm.
to say that, sort of structure. And this whole, like, all of a sudden I'm just thinking about Bikram, right? As you're
Oh yeah. All that happened kind of at the same time, right around 2012. A bunch of them all of a sudden got exposed.
tell, because for the listeners that don't know about a little bit more specifics, because my listeners like a little bit more juicy stuff. So this is juicy. So the scandals behind it, right? So there was the Bikram scandal. What
Anusara
scandal?
scandal.
Which one?
Anusara.
Is that the one you were
Yeah, it was
connected
with
to? Tell us
mhm,
about that time
with
for
John
you. Like,
Friend.
what happened?
What happened? Well, just the short version
Yes.
is, gosh, like, if because I was so sort of in it. Um, the head of Anusara, John Friend, they meaning some employees and some high level teachers, exposed and accused him of inappropriate behavior with certain students and women, some sort of uh, not scam, I don't know, something with insurance or tax or investments, and called him out on a bunch of stuff. And it was just like, and it was kind of at the beginning of Facebook, and it went like wildfire. And so all of this community just like lost faith, because and it happens in America, we want to have somebody to put on the pedestal to tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's another way that we look to a Father God
Mhm.
to come and save us and take care of us, and then it turns out he's a human being, and we are the first ones to rip him off his pedestal and
Mhm.
burn him at the stake. And so that kind of happened. That was like, went through, on Facebook and social media. And yeah, and so it dissolved basically over, the year. It dissolved and then transitioned into a teacher-led school. He ended up releasing all the trademarks to a school that I was actually one of the teachers that carried on and founded the Anusara School of Hatha Yoga. And so it's been since then, whatever that was, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, and it's evolved into a teacher-led school run by a board. And so there's not the hierarchy. In a certain way, there kind of still is, but there's not like one person, kind of on top telling everybody what to do, in the way that all the structures of corporate America, pretty much all over the world, this hierarchical where there's a white man on top
Mhm. Mhm.
and everybody else
And a
is
little
kind of
brown one. There was a
around.
little brown one on top for a while there.
And yeah, well, but that's part of all
No,
the
I know.
whole white supremacy. That's like, it is part of that. So, and it's, yeah, it's, it's
But here's
coming
this is
down.
and this
So,
is what's so great about this particular conversation, because even in my own, this is going to be episode 5 or 6. I'm not even
uh-huh,
sure which episode this one's going to be, but you know, um, of the new Omar Pinto Coaching podcast. So the Share podcast ran for 6 years, and it
mhm,
was more recovery focused. So you could take spiritually focused, mystically focused, yoga focused,
mhm,
and recovery focused. And so, I spent a good, I would say, over 10 to 15 years. So 10 to 15 years in recovery, and then a good solid 5 years in recovery space when I was doing my podcast. But there was that hierarchical system that
thing there.
it just always seems to just kind of penetrate. It makes its way in, and all of a sudden these opinions form, and this interpretation of the literature starts to kind of come into play a little bit more, and it starts losing its appeal, in the sense of, there was so much freedom coming into recovery when I first came in. Like, there was a lot of freedom about your ideology, and about how to get clean and sober, for example, right?
Mhm,
And it was like, developing a spiritual practice was an individual, was like, that's what they taught us. They taught us this is an individual practice that you are going to have to come up with yourself. It's called the God of your understanding. So what does that look like for you? And I just remember just feeling like, this feels so different. This feels comfortable. This feels like it's safe, and it's a little bit more free. But as you get more involved, the human can't help himself. The human, at some point, wants to take control, wants to give directions, wants to create a hierarchy, and ultimately, um there are those that will stay in and follow along, and then there's those of us that say, okay, it's time to make the shift. And
mhm.
like you were saying, well, spiritual, I've got my own spirituality, I like the mystics. So even down to the rhetoric, it's so delicate. We have to be so careful with what we say, because what does that mean? And if I claim to be this, what does that mean about me? It gets nutty. Would
Yeah.
you agree?
Well, okay, so
There was
there
a
was a
lot there.
lot I could have spoken to that.
Speak to whatever you'd like.
Yeah, so the thing is we and all of our families and parents and have been conditioned to look
Mm-hmm.
outside of ourselves for the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been conditioned to be that, to be at the service of those who actually have the knowledge and the power. The thing is and they're, like the churches or the priests, and where religion went wild. All
Mm-hmm.
the religions had their original mysticism. The thing is every single human being is born with a language that they have to their own, to this God, goddess, mystery, whatever it is. And the thing is children know it and they're completely connected to it. But we tell them who it is. We tell them who they aren't, who they are
Mm.
not. One time when I came home from one of my, I was teaching somewhere and I came home and he's now 17 and 6'2", but at the time he was 3, and he ran over and he sat on my lap, and I could feel my heart and his heart are the waves of love moving between us. And he's sitting there, and I'm sitting there looking at my daughter-in-law. She's nursing the other baby on the couch, and all of a sudden he jumps up and he looks at us and he says, "Mommy, where is God?" We both looked at each other like, "What is this?" And she said something to him. I don't even know what she said. What had happened was he had just started a nursery school, and it was like some kind of fundamental Christian nursery school. And I believe me, I'm a big lover of Christ and Mary Magdalene, and I highly recommend everybody read the Gospel of Mary. Anyway, he had just started a nursery school where they were telling him who God was and who he wasn't. And she said something to him, and I was just shocked. And he looked at me right in the eyes, and I looked at him and I said, "Bash," his name's Sebastian, "you are a little drop of God." And he's like, "Oh, yeah," and ran off to his room. And so it was such a profound moment for me, because it's like I saw in my own DNA being programmed by something else, and and so that's it. It is, we all have our own language with spirit or the mystery, and it's in our soul. And if we don't just slow down, that's what part of this whole pandemic is, to slow down and stop and sit and listen. How would we ever know it? I mean, it vibrates, it's talking to us at all times. And I forgot what I remember the meanings of quotes. I forget who says the things, but somebody smart and wise said, so many of the world's problems could be solved if we would just stop and sit and be quiet and silent. And so I don't know. That's the bottom line, is we all have access to this source that births stars and babies, and you know is the death that we're all walking with. We all have access to that source. And the thing is just peeling off all of the things that are not true and blocking our belief systems of how we can talk with our soul, and learning how to listen.
There was a whole lot there. So I'm curious, because this is such
Good.
good stuff.
Curiosity is the best place to be.
Yeah.
Curiosity is like it's our child.
One of my favorite podcast episodes that I interviewed uh Cold Chance, which we're talking about 5 years ago. And it's still one of the most popular episodes that I have out there. And one of the things she said at the end is, she says, allow for the unknown.
Oh
Allow for the
yeah.
unknown. Okay.
That's where all the magic and the fun is.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Allow for the unknown. Okay. So, you know, be curious. Allow yourself to be curious. Don't just take information at face value. Be curious.
And that, like, taking information, like, back to that spirituality thing, like, especially on social media and stuff. I mean, it has become a consumerism, like, where it's just, any meme will do, and it's kind of fast food consumption for regurgitation, but there's not a lot of actually living and walking it. And, to live, as a recovering person that has your own connection with your mystery spirit, God, whatever you
Mhm.
want to name it, like, it is not all happy, happy, joy, joy. It is mostly fire and flames and a huge mess, you know,
Well, with that being said,
with
that's
moments of glory.
there is this truth that I have come to embrace, which
Mhm.
is if life was what we always dreamed it could be or might be, like this idea of heaven and hell, so, or paradise, for example,
Uh-huh.
there's these mystical states, and I'm going to be very cautious of the word I'm using here. There is these idealized states, right, of, there's heaven and there's hell, or there's paradise, or whatever the case may be. And if life was this beautiful, picturesque, rolling hills, frolicking with the animals, you know, paradise, running around in your underwear, okay,
Garden of Eden.
the Garden of Eden,
No
human
wonder.
beings get bored in nanoseconds.
Yeah, it is.
It's like this is the cosmic experience. Like, so there is this soul contract we sign, and like, okay,
Who do you
what do
sign
you,
it with?
yeah, I don't know.
So, like, that's another thing we don't really know, because I had that thing of, like, what's the soul contract? Of course, we hope we have one, but, like, somebody wrote that in a book.
Yeah, no, no,
We
no. And
bought it at,
again, it's language. It's
yeah,
language. All right. So we're
yeah,
using language best as we can to try and understand what we can't understand.
yeah.
Okay. But what keeps getting presented to me
Mhm.
continuously over time is that I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I had not had the experiences, then I didn't have the
Right.
parents, I didn't take the journey, made the decisions, make the mistakes, okay, suffered and gone through the suffering and the pain and the loss of, these life's experiences in this journey, which some people would call the hero's journey,
Mhm.
to ultimately get to a place where I can fully appreciate, okay, being human, being alive, right? What does it mean to appreciate? What does it mean to be grateful, right? If everything's just kind of handed to me, do
Oh,
I
yeah.
have that same ability to be grateful and appreciative? Or does there have to be, you can challenge me on this. I would love to hear your opinion on this. But I believe that we all have to suffer at some point, right? Or we will never learn how to truly appreciate and be grateful for what we have.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't, like, that whole thing of, like, part of the physical expression of having an earth body that is a
Yes.
light body.
Yes.
Like, your body is a light body. Your
Mhm.
earth body is a light body. It is filled with this conscious presence. Every single cell is
Mhm.
conscious and intelligent
Mhm.
and vibrating. Every single cell. It is vibrating with light and sound. And what do the Buddha say? Or one of the things is, pain is inevitable.
Mhm.
Suffering is optional.
Yes.
And so, we all make choices
Mhm.
because we just do. And we do it from the highest knowledge that we have at the time. Like, as you know, probably, wow, if I would have known that, I would have made a different choice.
Right.
But we
Right.
make the
Woulda,
choice,
coulda, shoulda.
and then we can either take that experience that was either, easeful and joyful and felt good. We can take that as a blessing, or we can, like, oh, I was entitled. But, in
Take it
general,
for granted.
yeah, take it for
Mhm.
granted. Or if we make a choice that, oh, crashed and burned, or, we ended up having a really painful experience, we have the option to learn from it, you know, uh, or not, there's that thing, you walk down the same path. What we don't, when we get the lesson, it won't show up for us anymore. The addiction. I remember knowing, and part of this is, and these go back to some of the teachings that I learned from the yoga things. Part of addiction is wanting what you don't want anymore. When the thing has you,
Yes.
like,
Uh-huh. Yes.
like you get to a point. I mean, we've all been there. I've had my own little addictions my whole life, and still, have to kind of look at them. Um, where you're like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And then you find, oh, here I am again, whatever, smoking another cigarette, or, I want another drink, or whatever it is. So, back to the suffering. I don't know if we have to suffer to learn to appreciate. I know that an embodied life holds the whole spectrum
Yes.
of polarity. There is
Yes.
light and dark,
Yes.
and the only way to we learn how to get through the dark parts and go to the light, but that it's a pendulum, and it's always going to swing the other way eventually. And so um
Regardless of where you're at, this too shall pass. You
it
could be
will.
you could be in an incredibly, you know, best day ever, but this that at some point the pendulum's going to swing in the other direction. It's just
It
part
absolutely
of,
will.
and I think that too, I think it's part of that whole part of the journey is really learning how to manage expectations. And that when these moments come up that are painful and difficult, we immediately remember that we need to ground ourselves, okay, and go, okay, before I react, before I do something that could exasperate this situation, that I could potentially, if I don't take a moment to think about what my next move is going to be, I could make things worse.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, that's the first, um we in the yoga
Hmm.
world, is the first principle is you pause. And it's like,
Pause.
and it's, how do you welcome what's right in front of you? It could be a
Hmm.
tidal wave, a tsunami,
Yes.
like COVID. You take it in, and then you can use your mind to align to the actual current of what's happening, so you can act in the most skillful way. We're so used to, in the Western world. I mean, I live out in the country now, so it is very slow, which is, I love it. But in the hustle and bustle of LA and New York and traveling around the world and stuff, it's like busy, and it's instant, instant, instant. It's like, don't send that text. Don't respond. Put it down. Let it relax for a while. So
It is. It is. It's such a blessing, and this is why I like to do the podcast as well, because if you're listening to this right now and you are the kind of person that when something happens, it's like the house is on fire and you start running, then inevitably you could just end up running into another burning, room. Okay. So the idea is to, no matter where you're at, no matter how hot the flames, no matter how big the fire is, okay, stop, pause, and really take a look at what's going on around you. Take a moment to just kind of soak it all in, right? And allow your internal guidance system to kick in, because you
Exactly.
have to bypass the fear first
Mm-hmm.
before your internal guidance system will kick in and go, okay,
Goodness.
relax. We got this. That sound about right?
Yeah. Wow.
So, Benita, I want to know about rhythm of your mystic soul, because that's kind of how we just started this whole conversation, which was about spirituality and how, well, I'd rather use the word mystical. And so tell
Or
us about
mystery.
our mystery, the great mystery, which it is 100%. I don't know what's going to happen. No
Yeah.
one knows what's going to happen when we leave. I got an idea. I have a lot of,
We hope.
I have a lot of ideas.
I mean, I know, right? And I know. I mean, and there, there's certain ways that we have accessed. I mean, and when I say we, I mean humanity has accessed the we are multidimensional beings. And that's the thing, is we all belong to different dimensions,
Mhm.
but in the way we had been living, we were pretty much, living a 3D life, eat, make money, all those things, the 3D life. And humanity has always had different ways of accessing um, the mystery, the shamanic traditions. There have been the shamans and the priestesses since the beginning of time that went into trance either through dancing or singing or solos out in the country, out on the land, or plant medicine or whatever, and were the healers and the connection. And it was circular. It was circular. It was like a community thing. It wasn't like, oh, you got to go to like confession or anything. It was like if somebody was sick, the whole community came. Anyway, so we've all had access to it. I've had my own mystical experiences since I was a little girl. I never did acid or anything. I did do mushrooms, magic mushrooms, when I was 18, and had my first unity experience where I realized I had this like unlocking and whoa, we are all connected,
Mhm.
and this whole thing about love and all that stuff. And then, of course, that kind of settled down. And, I've always been on this path of connecting to spirit. I mean, I could tell you all the little mystical things that have happened, but that wouldn't be. Um,
Did you ever, as far as plant medicine goes, did
mhm.
you ever, other than magic mushrooms, did you ever try anything else?
You mean like the uh,
Like
my
ayahuasca?
ayahuasca? Oh, absolutely. I did. And it actually recently, it was only in like 2018. The first time I tried it, or I did a ayahuasca journey, was in, I think, 2011. And it was good. And I actually, I had a problem with the shaman. I didn't realize, but he basically misused his power
Mm.
with myself and a couple of the other women that we didn't know. I thought it was part of the ceremony. It was down in South America. It was unfortunate, um, which I didn't really realize until later. But then I went through about a year, I think 2018, maybe 17 to 18, of going through several ceremonies. My mother had died. I just was like at the end of my rope as far as like with the yoga thing, my yoga community had blown up. My mom died. I was like, what is this? And so I knew that it would call me. It's like yoga and anything, you meet things at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a year, I don't even know how many ceremonies I did, maybe 8.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very last one, I was like, okay, I knew. She said, okay, you're good for now. So, but that is
Number 8.
one of the ways. I don't know if it was the 8th one or what. It was definitely the last one, which when was that? I think it was in the summer of 2018, maybe, or 2019. Could have been in 2019. I can't remember. But yeah, so it was about a year of doing several, a little over a year. And, but even that time when I met you the first time in Vision Fest, and, marijuana also, I've had a few, like using it medicinally.
Mm-hmm.
This is one time. I was at the retreat center in where were we? Where was Santa Teresa? Is that where we were?
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's where it is. And the girl that I was staying with, she had a little bit, and I took one tiny little puff because I don't smoke or anything, and I didn't want to like get too high or
Right.
anything. But I took one little puff, and I was laying around the pool, and the cicadas were going, and it was jungly and beautiful, and I actually heard the voice, my own voice. So that's the secret, is the voice of the sacred is actually our own voice.
Mm-hmm.
It's our voice. I mean, it shows up in pictures and stuff, but it's the voice that is like the mother or the father that is
Mm-hmm.
nourishing and
Mm-hmm.
nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, the plants and the earth are your teachers now. And I was like, yes, of course. And that was 2016. That was right before I met you. So
What a
I've had
beautiful story.
I've had so many mystical, crazy things.
Here's the thing.
Amazing.
Would you say, because, I've I've done plant journeys, I've done ayahuasca, right? And actually in this conversation we're having right now is the first time I'm actually admitting it. So I've been kind of dying
It's getting so mainstream now, which is a good thing. I mean,
It is because, well, this is another thing that I enjoy about social media too. Okay. There's nowhere to run.
Yeah.
So if you've got a shitty practice and of whatever it is, I don't care what you're, chiropractor, coach, shaman, whatever, it is going to make it into it's going to make it into the internet, into the waves, the internet, information superhighway. Right. And you're going to be short-lived. I mean, just think about what happened with Bikram. Think about what happened with John Friend. Anytime someone has an experience like that, they're going to post about it. Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, things are going to come to surface. But,
No puedes tapar el sol con un dedo.
Say that again.
No puedes tapar el sol con un dedo. You can't cover the sun with your finger.
Right.
It's going to be revealed.
It's going to be revealed. So, ultimately, yes. And that's one, I've been, wanting to discuss it too, because of all the things that I've done in my life. And I mean, I've done a lot. I mean, I spent, 17 years in sobriety and, tons of coaching and personal development. And thank you. And so there's just been so much work that I have done on myself, and then discovering plant medicine, ayahuasca specifically. And when you said number 8, I said, I got to mention this, because I remember in the number 8 ceremony, and she said to me, you don't have to come back anymore.
It could have been my number 8.
Yeah. She said, I said, yeah, I know. She goes, you don't have to come back. You don't have to come back. You can if you want. Right. But you already know. Right. And the healing power of it. I healed so much about my relationship with my mother and my sister and my father.
Yeah.
And there
Those
was,
things
yes, these things where
that are
I,
in your shadow that.
the anger and the bitterness and resentments, right? And it just, it drops away. It just drops
Yeah.
away. And it's intense. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you try to fight it in there. The human tries to hold on, but like you say, like that, I heard the voice. Like I say, it's mama
Mm-hmm.
speaking to me. I'm like, I can hear mama. She's speaking to me. She's like, let go, just let go. There was so many moments in there where I
Yeah.
was, where it was she would just say to me, let go. It's going to be okay. Right. And it's just in those moments where in this human body and in this state right here, we hold on, we're attached to so many things. This attachment to things and feelings and emotions and memories, right? That's where the suffering comes from. That's where the real suffering comes from. This inability to let go of what no longer serves you. It was there for a reason. And then all of a sudden I realized that, my mother was my greatest teacher. My father was my greatest teacher. And I chose them, like this is how I chose to learn. Right. This is how I chose to learn. And it's interesting because as a father, right, I had no idea what to do. No idea what to do with my daughter. I mean, I was a complete train wreck. I'm 17 years in sobriety now. My daughter is 17 years old. So I got sober when she was born. I had no idea what my next move was going to be as a father. So my only default was, okay, I'm just going to do everything opposite of what my parents did. See if that works. That was my only strategy. It was my only strategy. It worked.
Oh, good.
No, but what it taught me and what it showed me even in my journeys was that everything that you know and everything that you are is every single experience that you overcame, every challenge, that every pain, every suffering, all your addictions, all of that. You wanted to be strong? You wanted to be courageous? Huh? How do you like me now? Oh, whew, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Right? And so anyway, that was some of that's I think for anyone that hasn't done plant medicine, what I just said might not have made a whole lot of sense. Did that make sense to you?
Totally. Yeah. I highly recommend it,
Me too.
for healing and stuff.
Mm-hmm,
It clears the limbic system, that where we hold our trauma
mm-hmm,
from our childhood.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like I was so privileged and blessed, and we all have trauma, and it sits there waiting and comes out in ways that we don't even know, and it was definitely super healing for me and so many people that I know.
I literally, no, I'd already, this was and just timeline wise, this was in 2020. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is when I started doing Journey. So I was already
Oh,
3 years.
last year.
This was last year. Yeah,
Oh,
last year.
wow.
Oh yeah.
How'd you do
So,
that in quarantine? Not in
well, because
quarantine.
I'm in Costa Rica.
Oh, okay.
So over here, they're kind of like, if you're in that community,
Uh-huh.
it's not my circus, not my
Mhm.
monkeys.
Yeah. Okay.
If you understand, not my
Yeah.
circus, not my monkeys, come on in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm there. Right.
Yeah.
And so that was again, it's constantly that experience of truth, right?
Mhm.
Like I can either buy
Truth.
into all of it.
Love that. Yeah.
Okay, I can buy into all this shit, right?
Mhm.
Or I can choose to speak and believe my own mind. Because
Mhm.
in my own on a cellular level, right?
Mhm.
I have a belief of what is true. I
Mhm.
may not run around speak it, on the airwaves, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like some people might consider to be somebody who's like a lunatic, right? Or confrontational, or how can you be so irresponsible?
Yeah.
So I hold my space,
Yay. Uh-huh.
but in my space, not my circus, not my monkeys. This
Yeah.
is, I mean, like I'm going to respect all the rules of engagement. Okay. I
Yeah.
promise. But around my people, we do what we want.
Yeah. Cool.
So, and like you said, it healed me in ways that nothing else. And like I said,
Good. That's what I agree.
17 years of recovery. And when I got after my first, I'd say after my first 4 ceremonies,
And
my
it is ceremony.
don't know. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not sitting at home going, okay, man, let me just hit some of this
Let's do some,
ayahuasca.
yeah. No.
Right?
Yeah.
It is a
Full on
full
ceremony.
on ceremony with a shaman, with the right medicine, right? You know, ultimately,
It's
if you're
all, yeah.
curious, you know, my favorite leaf is chacruna. So when they mix
Got it.
ayahuasca with chacruna, it's a much softer blend.
Mhm.
It's still very intense, but the healing properties is incredible. So yes, it 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 transformed my coaching practice. I was already good. I
And
just
now
became,
you're
I'm great.
super you.
I'm just
True.
great. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'm just the best version of me. Right.
Mhm.
It helped me, it like helped me be a better father and a better husband, a better listener, better human, right? More grounded, more present, you know, all of that chatter just crushed,
Mhm.
you know, that I'm not good enough. And, you know, and
All
what
of
are other
that.
people thinking about me? And, you know, just goes in the
That's
toilet. The noise
you.
stops.
You realize you are that little drop of God.
Yes. Oh, that's it. We are
You
all little
know,
drop of God, and all of a
we
sudden you're
are
like, yeah.
in this ocean of goddess. You know?
So how does rhythm of your mystic soul, how does that all kind of work? I mean, especially since I'm curious, so much changed in my life after doing plant medicine. Like,
Yeah.
curious for you, what direction did it send you? Because I know I had just focus and clarity and, you know, just laser focused. What did it do for you?
What,
And
the
how
plant
does that
medicine?
correlate with the rhythm
Oh,
of
how
your
does this
mystic
heal
soul?
this? So I was already practicing an earth wisdom, Celtic shamanic earth wisdom in a community of, you know, it was like for actually priestess to initiate as a Avalon priestess. It was a 4-year program I did in Avalon in Glastonbury, the UK. And it's all just learning the ceremony, the ritual, how to connect your with the rhythms of nature, you know, all of them. And
Mama.
so, you know, that's kind of been my spiritual practice, you know, for since 2012. And you know, I just want to share the things I learned. It's how we reconnect with our own rhythm that is always present, that shows up as our voice, and you know, the spirit of the mystery, and how we just keep coming back to it again and again. And for especially women, you know, nature heals us. You know, just if Marce, if your wife gets all anxious and whatever, out of shape, if you take her out in the jungle for a while, you know, on a walk, she will recalibrate and reconnect to her own natural rhythm. It's funny because my partner, he, you know, he hates it when I say, if I say partner or anything, but Jack, you know, if he sees when I'm getting, he
He's not
says,
your
you're like a
boyfriend?
lion. No, no. We just sleep together. He says to, you know, he's like, you're walking around like a lioness in a cage. I'm like, I'm busy. It's like, let's go on a walk. And I'm serious, like an hour later. And I'm like, yeah, you know, anyway. So the rhythm of your mystic soul, it is a path of embodying our light and learning and reconditioning ourselves to our natural essence that has been lost and covered up. We've all been like my little Bash that was 3, and he was being told who he wasn't. He knew before he started that little nursery school that he was this amazing, brilliant, beautiful, smart, funny kid, and they were telling him, no, you're not. You're this, and that's God, and that's how you have to be, and I'm very into the true Christ and the gospels and the Gnostic wisdom that Christ actually taught. What we have in our religions are through a lens of a masculine that is wanting to hold knowledge and power over people. Anyway, and so this is, the women, a lot of the people that I know, even women that are just starting in yoga or maybe having an awakening. There's a huge awakening on the planet, and people are waking up through the 2020, through all kinds of stuff. And really learning to identify what is your own truth. So much of it are interjections, that people told us that we were, and projections and stuff. And so just really learning to identify it. And we do it in circle with other women. I mean, sorry to leave you out, but there is something that happens when it's all women, that it's been that way forever.
It has been in my teachings and in my learnings. The further back you go, you recognize that women had a lot more power in ancient times, and men were fearful of that intuitive connection they had with Mother Earth and with spirit.
Yeah. We have a
And
certain thing that we know. Like when I
mhm,
say I know it in my bones,
mhm.
like, sorry, I don't know why I know it. I just know it,
It's
and
not even important to know why you know it. You just
I,
know it.
yeah. But like you as a man, like, do you just go, okay, like to Marseille or your partner and stuff,
My wife.
like,
We're gonna go with
yeah,
my wife.
we're going to go with wife. We're going to go with wife.
Okay, question.
So like, if she says, I don't know, I just know, as her man, you just let her be.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as a matter of
It's like,
fact,
you don't have to like gaslight and all that stuff. Right. Yeah.
well, and I'm glad you brought that up too. But it's interesting because of the example that you gave. Like if Marcia's out of sync, take her out into
Uh-huh.
the nature. It's actually the other way around.
Uh-huh.
Okay, she knows when she's out of sync, and so she just goes to our property. Okay, so we have a
Yeah.
big piece of land,
Right. Uh-huh.
trees, and like she goes there and she just starts planting and she just starts touching the earth, and she's gone.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
She goes and recalibrates all the time. Meanwhile, I'm in
Yeah.
here.
Like going, you're the big bear on the cave.
Yeah, I'm the big bear in the cave, right? And yeah, no, most of the time, yeah. And listen, the big bear will do that. She's always right, right? And so she'll correct me, and I don't like it, so I will like.
I know it's hard.
It
It's
is
hard to,
hard, but women have an intuition, that we can't compete with, right? So you'd be
yeah.
smart to just follow suit. And because men are probably more frail, more delicate than women, their egos are so
And it's,
delicate
yeah.
that the idea of being wrong around your wife or your girlfriend or whoever around women, right? It hits a nerve that's so painful that it evokes that anger. It evokes that
Oh,
charge of negativity because you're trying to protect and defend, this very, very delicate ego that whenever it gets criticized, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm failing, I'm disappointing them, right? And because it is so far beneath the surface, it doesn't get past the anger from the conscious perspective. So as it's getting close to that real soft, mushy, gooey part of our sensitivity, the anger kicks in and goes, no, we're not feeling that.
We're not going to touch
We're not
that.
feeling that. Okay, so you're wrong and I'm right. I don't know why I'm saying that, but I'm just going to say that right now, and then I'm going to storm out of the room.
Yeah.
Because we're defending ourselves and protecting the most delicate, most vulnerable part of us that women are so equipped with expressing, and makes it so difficult. For me, I know that I was a woman in my last life, because my intuition and my internal guidance system is so strong, and I'm only surrounded by strong women. Well, we just kind of did this whole kind of realization, right? Like my wife was like, oh, I go, honey, it's kind of interesting. I don't have any strong role models that are males. My dad passed away 12 years ago. It's my mother, my sister, my ex-wife, my daughter, my wife, and the list just goes on and on and on. The most influential people in my life are women. So that means to a certain degree,
like
I must be part woman.
Well, you definitely have an internal feminine, so we all do.
Yes. It's, I think for some it's a little bit stronger. I feel like in me it's stronger. So ultimately, for those of you listening, the rhythm of your mystic soul starts January 13th, which is going to start in literally 5 days. So by the time you're listening to this, it might be a little late, but if you reach out to Benita, it's going through January 17th, 2022.
Yeah.
So she might be able to sneak you in.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. So how do they reach out to you? How do they communicate and connect with you, Benita?
You mean what's the best way?
Yes.
Are you going to just tell them, I guess, on what?
You tell them, and then I'm going to post it in the show notes on my website.
Oh yeah. So I'll send you like the website
all the links and everything, but you tell them right now. Where is it?
Yeah. Either Instagram seems to be the way of social media, my mode of social media. I also have Facebook. And
so on Instagram, what are you?
Benita Wolfe with a little line after it, but
okay. So it's Benita Wolfe _.
Yeah.
All right. And then your website is?
It's benitawolfe.com, but right now it's on kind of like the Wix thing. So I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because, I didn't want to pay like the $300 a year when I'm not working.
Gotcha. Gotcha. We're being mindful.
So I'm back on the free site where it has like Wix, etc.
Okay, but it's got all the stuff on here and it's beautiful. Yeah. The world will be saved by the Western woman, the Dalai Lama. Okay.
Oh, that's what he said. That was a quote. I actually kind of do believe him.
All right. I believe it too. All right. So again, if you want to reach out to Benita, reach out to her on Instagram. Go to the omarpinto.com website. Go to the show notes. In there, I will list the links to her webpage and her Instagram. And send me your Facebook too. I'll add that as well. Okay. We've discussed so much on this episode. We really went above and beyond where I thought we were going to go. So I'm so excited to launch this episode because we really went into the mystical, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And for like your listeners, I love to talk about this stuff. And that's pretty much what the rhythm of your mystic soul will be, when we will be deeply exploring all of it.
Wonderful.
How to navigate life.
So what is one parting piece of wisdom that you would like to leave with our listeners?
One parting piece of wisdom. Truth conquers all. And trust your internal voice, that gut feeling, your heart. Listen to that, even when the external world is telling you don't.
We
you know.
And two, we all have that internal voice. Every
Everyone
single one, everyone
has
has it.
access to, you don't need, everyone has access to it. We don't need to go to a holy church.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is holy. You know, the sacred is everywhere
Everywhere.
that you make it sacred, you know.
So we are all little drops of God, and we
Yes.
are all at birth connected to source, which means that we are still connected to
Always.
source.
Never separate. Different, but never separate. Diversity and the one becomes the many. That's how we experience the oneness in a
I had
physical embody.
Yes, I on my tattoo here
Mm-hmm.
is Sanskrit. It says it's Soham right inside the
Soham.
Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
So I am that.
Soham.
And I am as much a part of the universe as the universe is a part of me.
Exactly.
We are all one, we are all connected. Our only purpose is to express, experience, receive, and give love and joy. If you can
Oh,
embrace,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, that's it. We just have to be like a tree, do
Yeah.
what they do.
Or a
Just,
child.
yeah, and a child.
And a child.
And
We
just
know
be it.
you just forgot. You just
Yeah.
forgot. All right.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So
Benita
magical.
Wolfe. Wow. What a mystical, magical experience. Thank you.
No, thank you. Loved
Uh,
it.
yeah.
So
All
fun.
right. Folks, we've now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
And that is a wrap.